Well, welcome back to another episode of Parenting in Foster Adoptive Kinship Care Settings in West Virginia. I'm Sky Kirshner. I'm in Charleston, West Virginia, and I'm here with my colleague, the amazing Dr. Deena Shelton, who's with the Townsend Institute in California and lives in Texas. What part of Texas are you in?
I live in very East Texas in a town called Longview.
Very East Texas. And so we're here to talk about parenting. And today I wanted, I think we've talked a little bit about continuing the idea of the importance of the welcome the infants receive when they first come into the world. And just sort of when you're an adoptive or kinship or foster parent, what kinds of challenges might that infant have faced, and what might their life have been like? And to do that, we're going to watch a little video that shows the importance of eye contact and facial expressions in terms of communicating to infants and toddlers that they are indeed welcome here in the family and in the world. Deena, anything else you want to say about this while I'm setting it up?
Yeah, I always love to bring up the need for balance in understanding the impact and influence of early childhood experiences. I think oftentimes people across the board tend to highly value and think that early childhood experiences are solidifying experiences that carry over, are very difficult to change, are very difficult to grow from,
Hmm.
and others sometimes discount them altogether. And neither is accurate alone.
Hmm.
Both are true. And so we have to hold that kids come to us with some really big deficits sometimes and some things missing. And as hard as it can be, it does not mean that it cannot grow and change and grow from that place. But it can't be discounted either because the early moments are so valuable. And we have to know what our kids likely encountered to be able to address and heal from there as they come to us at whatever age.
I really appreciate you saying that right off the bat. So as you watch this video, this isn't, well, it might bring up some feelings so take care of yourself as you watch this video. This is a video of what's called the still face experiment, and you'll hear the narrator describe it. This is a famous experiment that helps us to understand the importance of attachment and the importance of relationship in helping infants and children regulate their emotions and feel safe and secure. So, and I think here in West Virginia that it's so important because when we think about how the kids that are in these systems, the foster adoptive kinship care systems, how did they get here? You know, certainly tragic stories in lots of ways in terms of the dissolution and the disintegration of whatever was going on with their parents or their parent. Um, and as you all very well know, it's not always abuse. It's often neglect because of preoccupation with drugs, or if a drug has is creating neglect because the parents are just kind of zoned out and not really noticing or paying attention to what's going on with the kids. Um, we have this in huge numbers here in West Virginia. I know we have it everywhere in the country. So let's watch this and see what we can learn from it.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world.
All right, so let's just comment on that, Deena. This is a lovely interaction between the mother and her baby. What are you noticing happening? How would you describe what you're seeing?
Oh, even with the smallest of children, one of the earliest things that you see are those the parts of our brain that mirror emotions in another person, right? And how they are tracking with one another. It's not just one-sided even. Sometimes you see the mother's face change and the baby's face changes to match, and vice versa. The baby's face points and face changes to interest, and mom does the same. And that is the active neurological connection happening right in those moments. And we don't realize, or we forget that that's happening in our brains, not just in our feelings and our emotion parts, that the things that are firing and the places in our brain, the pathways that are being strengthened for connection just in those moments is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And John Bowlby, the one of the fathers of attachment theory, described a baby's smile as a social releaser. Babies are born with the instinct to smile. Why are they born with the instinct to smile? Because they expect that there's going to be an adult around who they know they're dependent on, because humans, as you know, are one of the few animals that are born completely helpless, completely dependent on their caretakers. And so the instinct of smile, there are 5 instincts that babies have. One is to cry, one is to suck, one is to grab. That's why if you give a baby your finger, they will grab it. And one is to smile, and I'm forgetting what the other one is. Deena, do you know off the top of your head?
I think it's rooting and looking for, right?
Oh yeah, and testing out with their mouth, putting
Uh-huh.
things in their mouth.
Yeah.
So with smiling is designed to create a reaction in the people around them. And it's for most of us, it's pretty much impossible to not smile when we see a baby smiling. And that's what you're referring to, that mirroring. So the mirror neurons are the part of our brains. And even as you're watching this, right, you're probably smiling as you're watching this because it's just so cute. And that's those mirror neurons firing on our brains that are saying, we really like being around smiling babies, right? And it's designed to attract the adults in the baby's world to want to take care of it, to bond, and to be there for the baby. And the mother is, it's a real dance, isn't it, Deena? The mothers and the baby are dancing here. They're both smiling. They're both enjoying this. Games like peekaboo are so exciting for babies. Where did you go? Oh, you're here. That little playing with separation.
Just that shared space, negotiating the space even between. And we often talk about parent-led and child-led activities, and in counseling, we practically oftentimes encourage parents to make sure they're doing things that are child-led. And the purpose of that, it can go out of hand in either direction. If everything's parent-led or everything's child-led, it's not even just that it's the one person running everything that's the problem. It's a lack of practice in negotiation of emotions, of containment, of space, which is something we all need to be able to do as healthy, effective adults.
Yeah, absolutely. To be in the presence of another person, to be able to dance with them, and also to be able to be left alone with them. But here we're looking at the bonding dance. Okay, so I stopped it here because this is where the hard part happens. The mother is going to stop being responsive to the baby, and you'll see within a matter of seconds, and the narrator, Ed Tronick, will describe what's going on. And I just want to give the mother a lot of credit for the discipline it took for her to ignore her baby for these seconds. The baby will clearly go into distress, not traumatic distress, because the mother's going to come back. If the mother doesn't come back, then we've got traumatic distress. So I just want to kind of warn you, that's what's about to happen. And let's see how it goes.
And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes...
This is a little hard to watch, isn't it? You know, especially when you think that there are infants in West Virginia, infants in Texas, infants all over the world who are experiencing trying to get the mother back, if they even had the mother to begin with, trying to get the mother's attention, and the mother, for a variety of reasons, postpartum depression, drug addiction, PTSD. We see this in refugee camps in Poland, and in the Ukrainian refugees, the Syrian refugees. If the mothers have had significant losses, but the baby is still there with them, just being unresponsive to the baby.
That screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
So Deena, this is deregulation, right? So an infant at this age, it loses control of their posture, right? And we have kids who will fall to the ground in a tantrum, right?
Mm-hmm. And so often, you know, we hear that being associated to, especially even in young children, to defiance or disobedience or opposition, which are very behavior-driven words. They're verbs and decision-making. And for children, and even for adults, it looks a little bit different because we learn to control their body movements. But there are pieces of these responses that are reactory and are not planned and chosen as methods of defiance, right? When a young child falls to the floor, they may have learned through some social learning, if they're old enough, that might get them what they want. That there may be times that happens, but in general, the dysregulation of the body is not an automatic indicator that choices are being made, because it's all so connected. And especially if there's a lot of that going on early in life, it continues. It just starts to come out in different ways.
Yeah, and we can imagine the infant is getting frustrated. So there is an emotion of frustration. You know, why aren't you coming back? And what's underlying that frustration or anger is the deep desire for connection. So it's sometimes it's easy to misinterpret a kid's anger and think, well, they don't like me, or they're mad at me, rather than they're trying to find me, and they're frustrated that they're not able to get the connection with me that they're desiring. Let's see how this ends up.
Okay.
So now she comes back.
I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a beauty.
Now this is amazing, right? So we have here a very secure baby who's willing, when the mother comes back, to receive her back right away. And it took what, 2 seconds for the baby to re-regulate, reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
How did you see that, Deena?
That is exactly right. And that is, I love this video because it is valuable for this early attachment, but it also gives us a picture of what happens when we can reroute these for our kids who've struggled.
What was that word you used again?
it reroutes their experiences
Routes
after
their-
they've had a lot of struggle in this area. Because what you see here of, she was disconnected for a few moments, and then when she reconnected, the baby returned. While it is not that quick, when a child has been that disconnected from a parent figure, the process is a lot slower, and it can span over months and years most of the time.
Right.
But what you saw there is possible, period. It may look a lot different in terms of how long disconnect happened and how little disconnect was there, but the ability and the desire deep for someone to return to connection and safety doesn't go away. It is innate in us. It is
Yes.
part of our makeup.
Yeah.
And so that desire to keep finding a way to connect is there. And so when consistent support happens in that way, kids and people, even adults too, can learn to re-regulate in situations. And I've told part of this story in another setting before, but when my daughter came to me, she has some nervous system issues, some dysregulation due to quite a few things, but there's some central nervous system stuff that goes on. And when she was young, and especially as not long after we'd gotten her, she would dysregulate and would kind of start hyperventilating, would struggle with regulating her own breathing, not just her emotions. Her body would just completely dysregulate. And so I began to have her, and with permission from her, she'd have to ask for it, but to put her back against my chest and match my breathing. Her only job was to match my breathing, ask and then match. And she would start to breathe with me. And in a matter of probably 5 or 6 breaths, her breathing would match mine. And her
Match
body
and
would
attach
re-regulate.
match and attach, is that what you said, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what was so beautiful about it. It took probably, I mean, I think I noticed it maybe close to a year after we started that. But I realized one day she was dysregulating way less often. But one day I realized she did it. She said, she said, "Will you help me breathe?" And I said, "Absolutely." And she turned around, and right as her back hit my chest, she was regulated. I had not even taken a breath yet. And so there was something about that, that process had taught her how to co-regulate her body, but she was taking it on
She had
as she was
internalized it.
growing. And
Right.
and it was only 1 or 2 of those. And that was the last time her body began to re-regulate itself.
Yeah.
And that was a process that we redid as she was 6, 7, 8 years old over the course of time, and it tapered off, but we rerouted that.
Yeah.
And it was possible to do it. It just took a long time, but the same thing. And she would reach out and she would regulate.
Yeah.
We can learn to re-regulate.
Yeah. What a great example, Deena. And this is an example of what we sometimes would call bottom-up regulation, where you're not using words really, you're letting the body speak to the body. So let's breathe together. As goofy as that sounds, that is or let's just let me hold you, right? I mean, of course, if a kid's feeling scared and crying, you know, that natural urge to just bring them onto your lap and just hold them. And so regulating from the bottom up, which means through the body, rather than the top down regulation would be talking to the kid about getting calmer and things like that. And right, that's not going to work. I mean, an infant's pre-verbal anyway, but the bottom up approach is much more powerful because it speaks without language to these natural processes of the body and the desire of the body to be calm again. So every now and then I see parents who are talking to their kids, but at a distance without any kind of bottom up kind of regulation attempts. And so it's easy to misidentify or to underestimate the value of exactly what you're saying, these very physical ways of connecting.
And we forget sometimes too that with that talking to and top down versus bottom up and the more rudimentary, we forget that when you're talking to someone about emotions, you're in very much abstract thinking land. We're assigning meaning and creating language around that, but emotions are experienced first.
Yeah.
We can talk about them, but even just talking about emotions is what we call a meta process. We talked about this before, talking about something that has already happened or that does happen or is happening.
Yeah.
And so the experience is the emotion. But
Mm.
with that, when we connect it to our thinking processes, children and honestly some adults do not always have very strong abstract thinking abilities. In fact, before teenage years, there's not really a lot of option to learn or take abstract communication and thinking and apply it to the concrete. That only starts to be available in teenage years. That's why when you ask someone, why did you do that? When you ask a kid that, they can't actually answer you. They can parrot and learn responses, but they can't answer from a real thoughtful place because they don't have the brain space to do that.
Yeah.
But
That
even
might
as
be,
adults, we connect better from that bottom down. We learn better concrete to abstract. Let's regulate you and then talk about why that worked,
yes.
not tell you you need to be regulated
Yeah.
and try to tell you what to do.
Meta processing, we sometimes call that, talking about what happened after we're calm, rather than trying to use words to create calm. So let's stop here and we'll go to part B right away. So thanks so much for being with us. If you like this video, Deena and I are available for live consultations every Thursday at noon, at least through June 2022, and we've got part B coming right up. So thanks for being with us, and join us on part B.